And I do think that is a likely outcome here. And I think this all comes back to the Fed. The Fed's been the leader in hiking rates. I think you see Europe looking to the US and the Federal Reserve and saying, hey guys, could you slow it down just a little bit? Because we're already in a lot of pain. And it's important to recognize that even though you have these different central banks, the Japanese central bank, the US, and so forth, everything is so interconnected in this day and age that the Fed can't do what they do and not have an impact on Europe, right? So
on the interview with YouTube channel Paul Bro Networks, he talks of the issues of the borrowing at the Swiss investment banks and the Credit Suisse banks gained ground over the network, with the Twitterati beginning to raise the specters of the Lehman-like collapse. Credit Suisse and Deutsche Banks, two of the world's largest banks, are suffering from the distressed valuations, and the bank's credit default insurance levels are approaching degrees not seen since 2008. Credit Suisse and Deutsche Banks control about $2.8 trillion in the global assets. On the interview with another YouTube channel Thinking Crypto, he was discussed the real problem and he was discussed the real issues of the bullish short term and bearish midterms on the gold, crypto, stocks, the Fed pivot.
Overall, I'm net midterm bearish, both on crypto as well as stocks. And again, the thing is, we just have to continue to remember that inflation is at a point and it's not down below 2% yet. So the Fed, if we do slip into a recession, which is what I think is going to happen, there's no way for us to get out of that recession, right? So that means that we're not going to print our way out like we have in the past, and therefore we're going to likely see further downside. Well, I mean, the narrative that has changed is the Fed has continued to be so hawkish. I mean, much more hawkish than even I thought they would be. You know, I've kind of been in the conservative groove where I'm saying to myself, all right, the Fed needs to be careful here, because if they do tip us into a bad recession and inflation is still above the 2% mandate or 2% sub mandate, then how do they get us out? The markets are going to look towards the Fed and say, hey, could you mind printing some money and get us out of this like you have for the past 20 years? And the Fed's going to be like, can't do it. We don't have 2% or under inflation. We can't print the way out. And I think that's starting to kind of have an impact here, where the Fed is just so hawkish and just kind of gangbusters ahead. It almost reminds me of an emotional reaction. They know they messed up. And I pay attention to the stock market and the news. Yeah. There's a new company that says, hey, we're going to lay off 10% of our workforce. We're going to cut X amount of spending, and all of those will loosen up the labor market a little bit. But I think the key is that it doesn't negate the shock that we already saw, where people at McDonald's or people.
In the discussions with the Kitco News, Gareth Soloway asked that cryptos and the gold tumbled Friday as the US dollars climbs amid the rising recession fear. The S&P 500 fell 1.7% by market close. Bitcoin fell 1.1%. The gold saw a decline of the 1.7%. The pain is not yet over for risk assets, said Gareth Soloway, chief market strategist of InTheMoneyStocks.com and the co-founder and the president of Verified Investing Educations. Hello and welcome back to the channel, guys. Bitcoin dips to the $19,200 as global financial markets tumbles. Before we start the video, subscribe to the channel and turning on the red notifications button so you'll never miss any more interesting videos like that one. Bitcoin price predictions. Worst case scenario, $3,500. Gareth Soloway says that things are not looking good. According to Gareth Soloway, he said also that we could be facing a worst case scenario, something similar to .com bust era when Amazon dropping 95% the value. He also said that Bitcoin will go to $100,000 or even to $500,000. I am not going to try to pick a bottom and miss it. Gareth Soloway looks at the recent price activity in Bitcoin, highlights that the sub $20,000 level is a buying opportunity. He says there is a possibility for a near-term breakout in the Bitcoin, but any weakness in the Nasdaq could send the crypto failing to the potential test new looks this year. Alicia Rastani was tweeted that, who is crypto analyst, stock markets, and the FX chartist, will Bitcoin drops to $12,000? Examining the shocking predictions by trader Gareth Soloway.
I think that we are headed into a global recession, but remember that recessions don't, the markets don't trade in a straight line. So you're going to get to these technical levels where people get overly bearish, and then you get these technical bounces, like for instance, when the Bank of England does something like this. And then what you'll see is people start to sway and start to get bullish again. And then as soon as they start getting bullish in a bear market, you have to be on alert that it's likely not going to go too much further. So I don't think, for instance, a one-day bounce is all we're going to get here, but I certainly do think we are going to go lower across the board on all stock markets. and really start to head lower. I'm kind of isolating down, and I can show my S&P.
Gareth Soloway also tweeted that last year when I was the Futures Blockchain Summit, I called $20,000 Bitcoins to a highest room as a Bitcoin had soared above $65,000. This time I will talk about my new forecast. Hope to see many of you there. Thank you to DXBounce blog for having me. Truly an honor. Dubai Crypto.
Sure. So my background is, about 20 years now of trading. I kind of grew up in a household that the stops need to be flushed out that are put at 20,000. So I do think you'll see a short-term break, but I'm actually looking for a bounce off of that break. So I think you could go back as high as 30,000 over the next month or so. The key here is looking at the 10-year yield. We're starting to see a weekly topping tail on the 10-year yield. We know if the 10-year yield comes down, it's likely signaling risk on for things like Bitcoin and tech stocks.
With an interview of YouTube channels TD Amrute Network, Bitcoin is at lowest level since December 2020. There will be likely a short-term break of the Bitcoin price. You could go as high as the $30,000 price level over the next months. The key is look at the 10 years yield. If the US dollar declines, this is a short-term positive for Bitcoin, and cryptocurrency is a very young asset and will move wildly until it matures, says Gareth Soloway. In the live sessions of CoinGeek weekly live stream, Chief Market Strategist Soloway admits to being on the losing streak at the beginning of this trading career. He subscribes to the following in the moment as one of the cause. After years to the trial and the error, importance of knowing your sources of the information, he is keeping the point that the investors only trust impatient sources. The only thing that the impatience that does not have an agenda is the chart. It's the purest form of truth or there, he says that. Let's take an overview of Bitcoin history with the help of the charts. The price change for Bitcoin reflect both investors' enthusiasm and the dissatisfaction with its promise. Satoshi Nakamoto, anonymous Bitcoin's inventions, designs of it in the daily transactions and as a way to circumvent traditional banking infrastructures after the 2008 financial collapse. Bitcoin had a price of 0 when it was introduced in 2009. On 17 in 2010, its price jumped to $0.9. One Bitcoin price rose again in April 13, 2011 from $1 to a peak of $29,060. By June 7, 2011, again of 20,009% within 3 months. Price slowly climbed through 2016 to over $900 by the end of the year. 10 in 2017, Bitcoin price hovered around $1,000. Its break to $2,000 in mid-May and then skyrocketed to $19,000 in December. Between January and May 2022, Bitcoin price continued to gradually decline, with the closing prices only reaching at $47,000 by the end of the March, before falling further to $28,000 on March 11. Check out this tweet, guy. Trader Sumit tweeted that another awesome interview with Gareth Soloway. Gareth Soloway of ITMS, I still see Bitcoin at $20,000 or lower. Listen to this interviews right now.
Yeah, so we have seen Bitcoin kind of go sideways and chop, it's interesting. If we take a look at the chart here, the chart really describes exactly what's going on, and I can kind of educate people on what it means. So we had the big move down from 69,000 basically to 33,000. Again, that happened to be a perfect parallel line. This white line connecting the highs from April to November, perfectly parallel connecting the lows. So you can see how recently we've hammered on it twice, once here, and then this was where the invasion of Ukraine kind of started, I believe, and kind of got crazy there. And again, notice how you had this one big update where you heard about a lot of the oligarchs starting to put their money in Bitcoin to avoid sanctions. But then again, we've seen it come back in. And basically, the idea here is that, yes, it's a risk-off environment, but from where we were in January, you're starting to see more and more worry about the global economy. And what does that mean? Well, it means the Fed may not be as aggressive in raising rates. And I think that explains why Bitcoin isn't getting crushed. And if you look at the tech sector, if we look at the NASDAQ 100, which trades very similar to Bitcoin, notice here was your low, and same thing, you've rallied off, you're coming back in now.
At the end, I'm always again talking about I'm now your financial advisor, and we shall not responsible for any financial loss occur if you want to invest in the cryptocurrency. So please research your own and also contact with your financial advisor. That's it for today. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and turning on the red notifications button so you'll never miss any for future fascinating and interesting videos like that one. So see you next time.